What's up, family? Man, this weather in the Midwest is officially out of pocket. Man, 80 degrees the other day. Then the high winds, tornadoes. Man, then the temperature dropped overnight. Got snow covering the grass. Wake up, it's 30 degrees. Man, all in a couple of days. Day or two. Oh, man, this weather need to be checked. Like Zelensky got checked at the White House. Today, go over some history. The book Slavery by Another Name documented the re-enslavement of blacks in the South. Late 1800s, or really after the Civil War, to World War II. Yep, World War II, Pearl Harbor. So, the verbiage sounds familiar, and the reasoning from people is parallel to how unarmed black men and women are executed by the police, or not even by the police, by citizens protecting other citizens. You know, sort of like a ruse. Kyle Rittenhouse, which technically, if the judge wouldn't have tossed the gun case, by law, he'd been convicted. He would have did time. Not to defend the child molester or whatever that was killed, but the fact itself, how cases like George Floyd, clear police brutality, knee on the neck, holding his feet down, sitting on his chest, etc., blocking EMTs from helping, providing aid, and from them not calling for aid, and they label it as, oh, he died from high blood pressure. That was the first thing, overdose or whatever. These perpetrators of moral injustice, when some were brought to trial by what's the Treasury Department, most of the time, well, overall, no conviction. If it was a slap on the wrist. So I'm starting with this indictment in, what's the name of the town in Alabama? It starts with a T. T-A-L, Towers. Hold on for a second. Bear with me. Let's see. I know I highlighted it. Yeah, should have wrote it down. You know, you wake up, you have things to do, get busy, and neglect to write down one minor detail. Okay, Tallapoosa County. Tallapoosa County, Alabama. Okay, so a few of the planters, you have a federal indictment for convict leasing, which was really kidnapping black men and some women, trumped up charges and enormous fines, and selling them to plantations. In northern Florida, there was turpentine plantations in the swamp. The coal mines, limestone mining, railroads was used too, clearing land for lumber. That thing was at the Pratt mines. That was real big. But these particular ones were local sheriffs and mayors and marshals snatching up black men for, it could be anything, disturbing the peace, riding, jumping on a boxcar, train car without a ticket. They had to ride to the next town, which is a misdemeanor. But they had a case when there was a group of white men that did it. They just did 5 to 10 days in a coal mine. When a black person do it, they get this enormous fine. The sheriff sells them to a broker for the coal mine, and they would amplify the amount. So the black person would be there 10 months or a year, and then it's another charge where you have more fines. Now you have to work longer. It's in perpetuity. So these particular people that were indicted were basically plantation owners, and they could get more prisoners just by telling the local sheriff, I need more people. Okay, so they go round up people for disturbing the peace. Vagrancy was a big one. They were really Jim Crow laws. But this particular case in Alabama was focused on one particular region, even though it was widespread. But this one particular region is documented. And so there was a multi-county ring of selling the prisoners, and they would be sold whenever the farmer or planter or the slave owner felt like selling them, he would sell them to another plantation. So you had no contact with your family. Disturbing the peace, you didn't even have to have anything to do with it. You could have been there when two people were fighting or gambling or whatever. You get anybody the first people they grab, that sounds familiar too. Okay, you going to jail for this. Even though the people that perpetrated this, that in fought, gambled, broke a bottle, whatever, they long gone. You there, you're getting charged with it. It'll be original fine of $5. The marshal will sell you to the broker for a fine of $15 to $25 per person, or he could do all three for $50. Under the under the phrase of peonage, which it were laws against that, but federally they were not enforced. That's why it was so widespread, and it was a big surprise that these indictments came. So, Trump would fine up, sell a person, and of course, you don't work hard enough, they can just beat you for whatever. You blink, you stop to take a breath, you get beat. You stop to get a drink of water, you get beat. And we'll go into the details of that. So, during the indictments, the people involved got nervous. They going to different towns telling people, we got indicted, shut up, check the witnesses. And of course, how the Klan does, they're going to, you testify, we're going to kill you, or kill you, beat you, like they usually do. So, let's get into some of the details because the witnesses, some of the former kidnapped slaves, did a lot of testimony. He had a couple of white people that testified also. And then with the wordplay from the slave owners, when they testified, it was just this angelic denial of breaking the law or the law of inhumane treatment, just a moral law. And we had one Mr. Turner said he bought us, the witness testified in court, Mr. Turner bought us all three of us for $50, and we were to work for 4 months and a half apiece. Mr. Dunbar sold us to him, I don't know for how much, and was later told the grand jury. None signed contracts agreeing to the arrangement, though later such documents mysteriously appeared with X's purporting to be those of the three black men. How you gonna sign your name as X? The facts say the judicial process took only 3 days to weed. The trio had been arrested on a Thursday, tried, sentenced, and delivered to a new owner on Friday. This is 1903. Testimony. And were at their forced labor by dawn's break on Saturday. That quick. Slave market. At Turner's Farm, the black laborers were put to work digging drainage, cutting wood, and cleaning up recently cleared new pasture. The most grueling sunrise to sunset tasks of a farm still being carved from the forest. They building a farm. Dave Johnson was beaten on the first Saturday by Alan Turner. Turner is one of the defendants. Son of the man who had purchased the three. I was whipped, Johnson said, because I did not know how to ditch. We didn't know how to ditch. You ain't train them. You just dig a ditch, then beat them. But don't that sound like some low-end jobs where you have a supervisor have you do a task and do not go into the details on how to do the task. They're supposed to train you for their specific task and then attempt to penalize you for not performing the task correctly. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so, lay me down flat on my stomach, one man on my head, another man to hold my legs. George Floyd. Enough of us in that video. And whipped me across my back. My clothes were on. I was whipped with a piece of stick about as big as a broom handle. I got 25 licks. Now, who's physically able to get up and do anything after that? He was whipped about every day. So you know his body is horribly bruised, probably maimed. Helms receives his first beating a day after Johnson's. He was whipped about 2 days after he got there, Helms testified. Whipped a long time, he couldn't even count the licks. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. Sometimes he took his clothes down and whipped him with a stick on his bare back. The third gentleman, Esau Williams, said his first corporal punishment came a week after arriving at Turner's Farm. Over the following 4 weeks, he was whipped nearly every day. They would drop their clothes and whip them with hickory sticks. When guards were particularly sadistic, they attached an empty metal bullet cartridge to the end of the stick to gouge the skin with each swing of the branch. Okay. Now I gotta go way back to medieval torture, that's what that was by definition. Definition is torture. And they came up with new ways. They just invent new ways to inflict severe harm on another human being. You look at some museums at the medieval torture devices that they invented. Catholic Church was known, they did torture people. Go against their doctrine, you get tortured, which what they call socialist and communist leaders to do in countries, or they torture people for confessions, etc., etc. That was the norm in medieval Catholic times. That was the norm. So, you get accused of something, they torture you, inflict so much pain that you confess, then they charge you and torture you to death anyway. Under excruciating pain, you would tell somebody anything just to stop the pain. But they say these countries are commies and socialists and use torture against their own people. Empty bullet cartridge. Okay. So, we have another guy, Pace, that was indicted. Pace turned operations over to Hardy and boarded a Central of Georgia morning train at the Dadeville Depot where he had purchased hundreds of black men over the prior 20 years. That's one person. Hundreds of black men over the prior 20 years. One person. And this was widespread. The hub of Alabama's economy. Okay. Now we got Turner. He's testifying in front of the jury. Turner told the jury he was incensed when he later learned that each of the three blacks he had only been fined $5 or $6 when arrested. Turner claimed he told the young men they could leave after 4 months of work instead of a year. Now, this the guy that likes to brutally beat black people. You probably blink too hard, you're going to get beat. Now, he's the benevolent savior of blacks that owe jail fines. You could leave after 4 months of work instead of a year. He said the workers were perfectly satisfied. And did that sound like when people were saying a good thing about slavery? Or the propaganda from, what could have been World War II or World War I, and how, these are sharecroppers, they're happy. Yes, they're happy. They're well fed, etc., etc. Let's note the game being played. They're perfectly satisfied, though he admitted that Speedy Helms, the best Negro of the bunch, the best Negro? What makes him the best Negro? Tried to run away. So they're perfectly happy, but the best Negro of the bunch tried to run away. Why did he try and run away? Why do you think? If there was a job and he was honestly paying off his fine and was not beating him, maiming him, properly feeding and clothing him, why would he run away? Who wants to get beat every day? For the human right of a drink of water after working in the hot sun? Of doing hard labor, wanting to take a break? Take a 10, a 5, 15-minute break? No. So he was recaptured and returned to the farm for reward by policemen in Opelika. Okay. 3 days later, George Cosby took the stand like Pace Turner. He told the grand jury he was flabbergasted by the allegations against him by various African Americans. I bet he was. Cosby said he had nothing to do with slavery, forced labor, or peonage. He said he'd been a consistent friend of blacks. Paying their debts and providing work out of kindness and good intentions. His version of events was that he paid a $10 debt to Pace on behalf of a darky named Albert Carmichael in January or February in 1901. Afterward, he allowed Carmichael to live on his farm. Okay, so that's the thing. When that debt was paid to the sheriff, the individual was in custody. They set the debt. He sold him to the plantation owner. The debts could be piled up after said term. He could say, you broke some equipment, you got to pay for that. Perpetuity. And they had no access to none of their relatives or no knowledge of anything going on in the outside world. But he allowed him to live on his farm. Carmichael was a mighty good Negro, a mighty good hand, a preacher. He freely left the farm and returned to his home in another county. Cosby could remember helping arrest and hold on a bond a man named Jasper Kennedy. So he if you was on that farm and you worked there and got beat, and legitimately in reality, if he let you go back to your home, would you return? Okay. Yep, those 3 Negroes are all that I have. I don't lock them up at night. I have no hounds. I keep a rabid dog. I don't go out armed about my place. Cosby said those Negroes are absolutely free. Said to say this holding his victims in the basement by chain with locked doors. Booby traps and shotguns and guard dogs. Okay. Let's see. Let's hear some more of this testimony. Okay, we had 2 black women in this testimony. A black woman named Matt Smith never worked a day for me in her life, Cosby said, reporting that after he paid the $3.45 fine for Smith, she disappeared to her father's. If she legally owed you work for paying the fine, and she disappeared to her father's, would you not go to her father's to retrieve her? Okay, caught up in a lie. Okay. And another woman, Maddie Turner, was held on a farm indefinitely, falsely accused of prostitution. Somebody swore the implication was clear that Turner was held for the sexual exploitation of the farm. And it's testimony that at least one of the captives were beat to death, or murdered. It could be by gun, beating. That's my other notes. Oh yeah, we had newspapers involved also. On another day, it was a lot of testimony. Okay, this one journalist, Manning. No, not a journalist. He sort of stepped forward and condemned the new slavery system. Very few. Okay, one of the citizens that was condemning the system in Alabama wrote to the New York Post last night that the abuses of blacks he had witnessed and the men in his county alleged to have held slaves. It is today under the law in Alabama, crying for a farm laborer that's black to quit his employer. He may be denied his pay. He may be half-fed. He may be beaten with a buddy trace. But if he fails to keep his contract, then he is a criminal. So he can be the victim of assault, kidnapping, slavery. But if he leaves his contract, if he breaks his contract, then he's a criminal. So in the eyes of the Most High, who's the real criminal? Written law. And there are black belt planters, black belt, not martial arts, the southern region was called the black belt for the high number of black people living there. There are black belt planters who do starve, mistreat, abuse, and beat men and force them to break their contract in order to get them arraigned before some demon in white skin. That is what the citizen wrote to the New York Post, and it was black people doing this. It's like with a small number of black slave owners. But with the heart as black as hell itself, and another year's servitude is attached by a chain more galling than that of chattel slavery to the ankle of the black man. The case of Patterson is only one in thousands, yes, in 10,000. The mayor of one town, Mayor Dave White, fired back in defense of his town, claiming that no black man or woman had ever been abused in his court. That's where the trickery was happening. Vagrancy was a law. If you didn't have any money in your pocket and you didn't have a job and you were on the street, you could not be loitering. You have any money? No. Okay. You're a vagrant. You better have a note from a white person in good standing. Then they lock you up, put a fine on you. Now you a slave. You owe us a fine for being a vagrant and put a high bond on you. Now, no, in a few cases, some people had family that had a little money saved up where they would come pay that fine and take their relative out before they could get sold off. So, and then if you did have money in your pocket, a white person could say, you got some money? Yeah. Well, you owe me some money. No, I don't. Man, get out of my face. 3 days later, the sheriff is there at your folks' house looking for you. Oh, you owe such and such money. Okay, well, you got this case and it's fine now. You can work it off. We're going to sell you to the Turner plantation. They know how to treat you. Yeah, they real nice. You'll be all right. Just sign this here, gone. Yep. Human trafficking is what it was. By definition. Human trafficking. If they would keep the woman to grape her for the good old boys. Human trafficking. So with this mayor in defense of his town, claiming that no black man or woman had ever been abused in his court. Unjust punishment of Negroes is absolutely repulsive to me, and that no Negro is imposed on when... Hold on for a second. Hold on. Unjust punishment of Negroes is absolutely repulsive to me, and that no Negro is imposed on when it is in my power to prevent it, he wrote. You know what that sounds like? It was a case last year in the fall in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The black man had a white neighbor that kept harassing him. The black man said his trees was growing over, bushes growing over in his yard, and he was going to cut them. He's out there cutting stuff off of his property. The white man shoots him from his window, shoots down at the black man, hits him, I believe it was in his chest or close to his neck. Minneapolis police did not arrest that man until I think he threatened the man's wife, who was white. His wife is a white woman. And the chief of police got up there and twisted his head to the point, we absolutely failed him. The system failed him. I admit that. That's what this sounds like. The wordplay. You get ahead of it, you admit it, like it's not a systematically functional problem. The same city where George Floyd was murdered by Minneapolis cops. And how the media and citizens tried to make up, they were gaslighting us. We could clearly see him dying. It was heartbreaking. But it wasn't, and he was handcuffed. So it wasn't the knee and other cops on his chest and holding his feet, couldn't move. He just had to sit there and die. But no, he was already handcuffed. He was already in the car handcuffed before he was on the ground being killed by Chauvin. You just call him Chafin. Just change his name or whatever. We know who it is. Chafin. Okay. And to go on to say, he also testified, I defy any person to prove that any Negro or white man has ever been convicted in my court that was not guilty or that didn't have a fair trial or that received illegal or cruel punishment after they had been convicted, because they sold across 10 different counties. They really didn't have trials. They were arrested, fined, sold. You can't find them. I am certain that I can truthfully state that no Negro has ever been worked in slavery in the town of Goodwater since the day when slavery was abolished in the 60s, in the 1860s. It is a fact that numerous Negroes have been tried and convicted in Goodwater for stealing and have received a small fine and life punishment. Shake my head on that one. If you're getting years of hard labor in a coal mine for a misdemeanor of riding a boxcar without a ticket, now we are going to what's your definition of light punishment and a small fine. Because to you, light punishment is a year of hard labor in a coal mine, where you get light food, you're not getting fed that much, unsanitary conditions, mainly from accidents or death from a lot of accidents. Well, let's get back to the case at hand. When a white man under the same circumstances would have been much more severely dealt with, as a great allowance is always made for the Negro owing to his standing in life. I ain't never heard so much BS in my life. They just flip the scenario, the social norm was inhumane treatment of black people. So you saying a white man would have been more severely dealt with because, you know, the Negro standing in life, the white man know better, and you're going to treat him more harshly. When has that happened? When has the white man that has been convicted of a harsh crime been treated more severely than a black person that have done less of a crime but was projected to be such a horrible person? He deserved the worst treatment ever. That case in Milwaukee, the trial was a year or so ago. No, the trial was last year. It was an immigration lawyer, white man. He had an immigrant wife. They were in Milwaukee. The black man was riding a bike right side of the street like any other bike riding person in traffic. And the black man said they bumped his bike with the car. And the lawyer called him an N-word. The lawyer was the passenger. His wife was driving. So after that, the black man punched him in the face, took off with his bike. So they sped up with him. They're by a bridge. He's on the sidewalk. He said the white man jumped out, had a knife in his hand, and came to him. And he got close, and the black man was strapped. Of course, that's self-defense. He shot the man. Man died. They had either testimony or video to his wife going up to his body to pick something up and walk back. So the black man being spooked, being scared, there was people on TV saying they were going to kill the guy who did this, whatever. So he took off, left the state. He was on the run for a minute. He was on the run for a while. At the very least, 3 to 6 months at the very least. He tossed a gun in the river. They never found the gun. He got arrested, brought back to Milwaukee. He had a black lawyer. He had two lawyers, a black lawyer, and there was another lawyer, could have been of Middle Eastern descent. His plea was not guilty due to self-defense. Okay. They portrayed the lawyer as basically the savior of immigrants by law. The black man, he went with the verbiage of he apologized. If it happened again, he wouldn't do it or whatever. If it's self-defense, it's self-defense. You cannot apologize for self-defense. And of course, he got convicted. With that, he got convicted. And the lawyer tried to steer him back in the right direction. You were afraid for your life because he had a knife. You were afraid for your life. If it happened again, I apologize. I wish I wouldn't have did that. I did something different. You the one that was about to get stabbed. And it's like, if he apologized, that will make it better. It's a paradox. It's either self-defense or it was manslaughter. Your defense is self-defense. You fear for your life. You cannot apologize and wish you could go back in time and wish you wouldn't have did that and apologize again in self-defense. Got locked up, got convicted. But this statement brought that case to mind. This with this white lawyer and this black gentleman riding the bike. The lawyer, they could have painted him as Jesus Christ, as white Jesus. But yet, they were the antagonists. Okay, let's get back to the story. Let's see. Where else should I take notes at? Okay, and gotta fast forward a little bit. They were convicted, but I'm not sure of, and I'm not gonna bore anybody with digging through the case after the fact, but I do not believe that they actually did a lot of jail time. But they were, let's see, what were they sentenced to? A year and a day in federal custody. Well, yeah. If I do find that, I'll put it in the comments, and I have to go move forward into now with the jury. They had more indictments. They had a jury foreman, Judah T. Moses, a wealthy seller of real estate and insurance, gave the judge a written request for advice on the constitutionality of the Alabama statute, making it a crime for a worker to break a farm labor contract, which was punishable by a fine of up to $50 or 6 months of hard labor. In the jury asked whether the act violated the 13th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. Judge Jones replied that he had devoted much thought to this question and would give them an answer later. One juror also inquired whether a justice of the peace who gave a sentence in excess of his authority was guilty of peonage. Good question. Excessive sentencing. It was a case, and black people have been victims of that for decades. Well, since the end of slavery. Excess sentencing. It was more than one judge. This was years ago this came out. He was giving black juveniles excessive sentences, especially on first terms, to send to a particular juvenile detention center that was privately owned, and they needed workers, or they needed it to begin. They did. They needed workers there. I'm going to have to dig that story back up. The judge ended up being convicted for that. Was he convicted, or was he just dismissed as a judge? I got to dig into that. But it was a private institution, and they needed more juveniles. And he was sending them juveniles with those sentences. Excessive sentencing. Okay. The judge said that the justices of the peace would not be guilty if the sentence had simply been an honest mistake. You're a judge. You don't know how much time you're supposed to issue out for this crime. Instead of 6 months, you're 90 years. Oh, my bad. That was a mistake. Okay. All right, Joe Biden. Okay, so, if the had simply been an honest mistake, but that if the official acted in bad faith or corruptly, he would be guilty of causing the person to be held in peonage, which is against the law. No judicial proceedings, regardless of how lawful they appear on their face, would be a defense. The judge noted if they were a cloak or a fraud to cover up their illegal design to cause persons to be held in peonage. But then, so how can you prove that one individual was acting corruptly in their mind when they made that decision? Always a side, ain't even a back door out. That's a side door out of that. I wasn't acting corruptly. That was an honest mistake. You just sidestep it. He's not going to admit he's a criminal. You heard the testimony of the mayor. Ain't no way a white man can get treated worse than a black person because a black person standing in society. Come on, man. Come on. Let's see. Yep, let's see. Okay. Yeah. More indictments. More indictments. I'm going to bring it up to World War II. Pearl Harbor. It was World War II. This started in 1939, and then 41, Pearl Harbor was bombed. This was still happening then. Look up, what is that circular number? Did I write it down? And you could pull up the document issued by the Attorney General. Roosevelt was President, FDR. Hoover was operating the FBI. I gotta find that circa number with the decree to finally prosecute people doing peonage. And the reason is insulting. Okay, here you go. Circular number 3591. That was 5 days after Pearl Harbor was bombed. And it was right on the heels of another indictment for peonage. Now, note, they were getting indicted, but in the South, if it was a conviction, a judge, a slap on the wrist, or the jury just wouldn't convict. Okay, let's see. There's too much I have to say. Charles Bledsoe. It was a case of Charles Bledsoe. Let's see. Okay. I'll find the beginning of this short historic incident. Okay. On Charles Bledsoe case, they had testimony. Davis is taking the chains. Let me back up. Oh, yup, this is the one with the dice game. Okay, hold on for a second. Okay, yeah. We'll go from right here. Andrews Davis. Okay, now we this is taking reference from another author. I forgot to mention the author of this book, Slavery by Another Name, is Douglas A. Blackman. Born and raised in Mississippi, was a Wall Street journalist, investigative reporter. I don't know if he still is, but at the time of the book, he was. To combat the assumption that it's taught in school that slavery ended with the Civil War. Okay, and this part, getting to the end of the book about another author, last name Spivak, that compiled a list of data on the number of arrests in some of these counties and states during this time period, because you got up to the 1930s. I think Georgia banned convict leasing, but yet it expanded up through the 1930s. So, well, I gotta back it up a little bit. I was looking for this case where this guy got the slap on the wrist, and this was right before less than 2 months after the slap on the wrist of Charles Bledsoe. That's when Pearl Harbor was bombed. Oh, okay, here we go. Level motivation has and detained litany of mechanics of slavery, federal. Okay, people wrote letters to the Department of Justice about their people being kidnapped. White people wrote about citizens being kidnapped into slavery. The Department of Justice they didn't do anything. They said, well, if it's not under the term or this, that, and the other, can you prove it? They're just writing you, they're telling you they see this. That's proof enough. Father writing his daughter was kidnapped and being held, and nobody's doing anything locally. Can you do something? No. Let's see. Starting with the bottom of this paragraph. Peonage is a condition of compulsory service based upon the indebtedness of the peon to the master. The basic fact being indebtedness, Keenan wrote in boilerplate language. This is the Department of Justice responding to a person writing to them about the degree of peonage that is going on in the South. And you know what? I got to back it up a little bit. A farmer named Willis wrote a letter to the Department of Justice with the detailed litany of the mechanics of slavery in the 1930s. Federal officials, weary of the issue, had little interest. Point blank, period. Writing on behalf of the Attorney General, Joseph B. Keenan replied with a time-worn explanation for why slavery was not a matter meriting the attention of the Department of Justice, that only narrowly defined debt slavery would be examined by federal agents. This is 1930s. Department of Justice. And look what role the Department of Justice played in politics in the last 8 years. So they wrote, peonage is a condition of compulsory service based upon the indebtedness of the peon to the master. The basic fact being indebtedness, Keenan wrote in boilerplate language. Ignoring that Willis' letter explicitly described a system of holding laborers against their will until claimed debts were paid off, the Justice Department official dismissed Willis with a patronizing bureaucratic directive. If you have any specific facts showing that the matter falls within the above definition, it is suggested that you report the same. Case was closed. By the middle of the decade before World War II, federal investigations into peonage all but stopped, except in the most egregious cases. Even those resulted in the rarest convictions. Even more rare was meaningful punishment. On October 13, 1941, Charles E. Bledsoe pleaded guilty in federal court in Mobile, Alabama, to a charge of peonage for holding a black man named Martin Thompson against his will, using the same technique as John Pace in 1903, along with the Turner Farms. The Turner Plantation. Bledsoe didn't resist the charge and trusted that federal officials and the U.S. District Court would not deal harshly with the white man holding slaves. He was correct. Bledsoe's punishment was a fine of $100 and 6 months of probation. The status of new black slavery appeared complete. The futility of combating it was clear. Less than 2 months after the slap on the wrist of Charles Bledsoe, the naval forces of Imperial Japan launched their attack on Pearl Harbor. Now, 5 days after the attack, on December 12, 1941, Biddle, is this the Attorney General? Hold on for a second, let me back it up. Back up. Less than 2 months after that, U.S. officials frantically planned for a massive national mobilization. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the one that Langston Hughes was waiting on for fits and problems and feeding people. Y'all read this poem, The Battle of Roosevelt. Langston Hughes. I'll tell you all about him. President Franklin D. Roosevelt instinctively knew the second-class citizenship and violence imposed upon African Americans will be exploited by the enemies of the United States. Attorney General Francis Biddle called together his top assistants and shared the president's concern. So the only reason it stopped was because of World War II, the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. They were worried about the Germans and the Japanese using our inhumane treatment as a weapon for recruitment. The U.S. was only concerned about our slavery in World War II in the South because of potential recruitment of our condition being used against America and the Japanese and the Germans benefiting from our condition in slavery. The only reason that Roosevelt had his Attorney General shut it down. The only reason. The only reason. Okay, calling together his top assistants. Biddle was informed the federal policy had long been to cede virtually all allegations of slavery to local jurisdictions. Okay, effectively guaranteeing they would never be prosecuted. Biddle, favorite son of an elite northern family in Philadelphia, was shot. Whatever. Okay. 5 days after the attack, Biddle issued a directive, circular number 3591. I will put that in the description. To all federal prosecutors acknowledging the long history of the unwritten federal law enforcement policy to ignore most reports of involuntary servitude. A survey of the department files on alleged peonage violations discloses numerous instances of prosecution in decline, he wrote. It is the purpose of these instructions to direct the attention of the United States attorneys to the possibilities of successful prosecution stemming from alleged peonage complaints which have been considered inadequate to invoke federal prosecution. Biddle proceeded to lay out a series of federal criminal statutes that could be used to prosecute slavery. Oh, boy. In the United States, one cannot sell himself as a peon or a slave. The law is fixed and established to protect the weak-minded, the poor, the miserable. Men will sometimes sell themselves for a meal or contract with another who acts as surety on his Bonds work out the amount of the bond upon release from jail. Any such sale or contract is positively null and void, and the procuring and causing of such contract to be made violates the statutes. Argued below in this memo. You all have to pull up the memo. They were to instead label every foul as related to what it truly was, what it has always been for the past 7 decades: involuntary servitude and slavery. And in August 1942, a letter from a 16-year-old black boy, arrived at the Department of Justice alleging that Charles Bledsoe, the Alabama man who received a $100 fine for peonage prior to Biddle's memo, was still holding members of the boy's family as slaves. Despite the Biddle directive, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover initially saw no need to mount another aggressive investigation. The U.S. Attorney in Mobile, Francis H. Ng, was similarly disinterested. No active investigation will be instituted. Hoover wrote to Assistant Attorney General Wendell Burge attempting to close the file. The boy said his family is still enslaved. Wow. That would have been the end of the matter even a year earlier, but 7 months in World War II, with the nation anxious to mobilize every possible soldier and counter every thrust of Japan's and Germany's propaganda machines, Burge directed Hoover to look further. Man. Wow. I'm going to have to make another video with some other information from this book. Boy. Oh, here we go with the numbers. Okay. The Arthur Spivak with the statistics on the amount of, with the numbers. Anyway, statistics and numbers on the people arrested in up to 1930. Spivak was born in Connecticut. He was a police reporter for a newspaper. Contrary to the congratulatory pronouncements that followed Georgia's abolition of the practice of selling black prisoners in 1908, the state had more forced labor slaves than ever by 1930, in excess of 8,000 men, nearly all of them black, worked in chain gangs in 116 counties. Of 1.1 million African Americans in the state that year, approximately half lived under the direct control and force of whites, unable to move or seek employment elsewhere under threat that doing so would lead to the dreaded chain gang. Because in those places, you had to have a labor contract signed on the first, or you go to jail. And then you could have a labor contract work, and the guy won't pay you. And then you leave, and then go to jail, and go back to him, and work longer than the original contract. Now you're working for free to pay off your fine. So, it's a lot of verbiage how folks like that, the words and phrases they use to justify their actions. Now, note, if this was done in all fairness and in Christian upbringing and humane concern for black people, why, when you go to court, you've never done this and you did that and it get exposed to the world? Now it's propaganda time. We got to put a lid on this. We got to project good things out there, because the old phrase of, oh, these slaves are happy, these sharecroppers are happy, it don't stand up. when you had the New York Times writing about the deeds and actions of forced slavery from trumped up charges. Now you're threatening witnesses. I thought it was in all good nature. Another thing, if black people were considered beast animals, N-words, filthy, savages, then why would white men just willy-nilly raping black women? So if we're animals, you like having sex with animals. That's bestiality. So by definition, those white men were into bestiality. Were they not? If we're beasts, we're animals. And if that's the case, the dogs and the hogs were treated better than the slaves working in a coal mine. There was one case where, in a coal mine, where it was one of the sections in the coal mine, the overseer had some pigs. One of the pigs was trying to get some food from the black slave, and he threw some hot coffee. They had just brewed coffee, threw some hot coffee on the pig. He got beat really bad for that. So if the hog gets better treatment than a black man or woman, if we're really beasts and savages, why the change of tone when the whole world sees your deeds? Why the change in the verbiage, the wordplay? Oh, I never heard of that. They were free. See the scars on their back. The cemetery. Oh, when they died, speaking of George Floyd, oh no, he died of overdose, not the knee on the neck. When they beat a slave to death in a coal mine, the excuses were just unimaginable. One guy, they said he choked his chicken too much before he started work. That's why he died. But they beat him so bad that they had a one coal mine. They had a leather strap that weighed 3.5 pounds. When they wanted to, they would add molasses to it and sand to bring the blood. They would add various things to their medieval communist style of motivation. Where it had somebody strap you over a barrel. It had two other slaves hold you on both sides of the barrel so they could beat your back and beat your body. Then tell you to get back to work. And some black people told them that N-words are cheap. That's why you're doing it. And told them if we were slaves, you would take care of us. We would eat and have clothes. Even though they were still slaves. And slaves still did get beat. But a constant beating and tell somebody to get back up to work while they're physically unable to would cause them to get beat to death. And one slave in the coal mine got beat to death. They said he drank too much water before he started work. Note the similarities to today. Note the similarities. Oh, how did she die? Oh, it was suicide. What's that lady in Illinois that the piece of crap cop shot her in the face and the eye? She died with the boiling water. He told the hospital it was suicide. It wasn't your bullet. It wasn't you. She killed herself. How she killed herself? Was she fell on your bullet? No, you just bloodthirsty. Well, just the similarity on the verbiage and excuses, the lies used today are the same as in the past. Even the president and the FBI didn't care about our condition until we went to war. Don't ever forget that, ever. All right, family, I'm going to wrap this up. And please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.